Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Two to Tango. Today, here, Sapta and myself, we're back again with another very pertinent and an important topic that we wanted to discuss. Let's take it from here. And today, we want to discuss about a very important aspect about the whole MBA journey. Right? In a lot of our previous videos, we have talked about how to crack GMAT, how to apply for a lot of MBAs, and what to think of when you're thinking of moving from a manufacturing into MBA, post MBA, and all of that. I think today we wanted to focus on a very important aspect about the whole MBA journey is how do you crack the MBA admissions interview, and a bit of a focus on the 1-year MBA programs, but obviously I think what we will discuss will be relevant across the other MBA admissions interviews also. So Sapta, MBA admissions interview, something that we both have taken up long time back, and it's been years now. What do you think, MBA admission interviews, where does it start? Where does that psyche start?
I think we have done long back, but as soon as you enter into an interview panel or think about an interview, the first thing that probably hits you is who is the interview panel or what is the interview panel, right?
Correct.
And typically based on the experience that we had and the experience that we spoke with our friends, etc. I can at a very top level can distinguish an interview panel into two types. One can be a very professor-led interview panel, which is something you would typically see in a college like IIM Ahmedabad, and the other one is an alum-driven interview panel, which you would see in an IIM Bangalore.
Yes.
Or if you can take it to the extreme, it can also be something like ISB, where you can have a panel which is only alums.
Correct.
So I think those at a very broad level can be two distinctions. But the question is, does this really matter, right?
Correct.
Because at the end of the day, what you are trying to convince the panel for is that you are good enough for the college, right? So is there really a difference? And I think that is what we're gonna talk about it today. That is there a difference? If there is, then how you can address that. And I think at the end of the day, always remember one thing, that it is always like any interviews or anything, it's about gaining that slight bit of an advantage.
Correct.
By being a bit more aware. So this conversation is not really to tell you these are massively different, but to give you a bit of an awareness of how you can use the interview panel to your advantage.
Correct. And I think you made a very valid point, right? Interview panel is the first thing that comes, in your mind when you talk about an interview. Obviously, we know that an interview is a much larger aspect about, not just limited to the interview panel. So probably what we'll do is we'll kind of break down the various aspects that we want to study or we want to talk about. Today we'll talk about this interview panel thing, and in the subsequent interviews, in subsequent videos, we can talk about some of the other aspects also. So, Sarta, you talked about a very important aspect about the interview panel, that there is two different types of panels that you can expect in different colleges, and I expect that different colleges would also keep changing things. So it's not that the same thing will happen always, but in all fairness, we say two different types of panels that you will see. But now question is, you have a professor-led panel and you have an alum-present panel, and obviously sometimes there will be professors also there. Do you really think that these are very two distinctive panels and the approaches are very different for these two, or there is an overlap? What's your thought on that?
I think, as I said, right, it's all about awareness, and I think we have to understand the vantage point each of these different individuals are looking for, right? So if it is a professor, the professor is looking from the perspective of academics or from the perspective of the college. So he or she is looking for how you can bring diversity into the class, not only diversity of gender, but diversity of thought, diversity of experience, how you can make the conversation in a class richer, right? They are also looking to evaluate your inherent motivation, why you want to do that MBA, and then map it to the college in terms of what the college provides, right? So I'll say that it can be a bit of a typical example, like if it is IIM Bangalore, considering it is within Bangalore, you would get a very digital heavy presence, right? You would have a lot of IT companies coming in. If it is Ahmedabad, you would typically find marketing companies or big corporate
Business
houses, right? Because it's based in Gujarat, it is closer to Mumbai. If you take Calcutta for an example, it would be around mathematics, around statistics, given ISI historical relevance. So a professor is also going to, relate your experience of what you bring in and your motivation to what the college inherently provides. Is it even possible within the realms of that college? And I think one thing which I feel is very relevant that the professor evaluates is how equipped you are given your personal circumstances to take the rigor of a 1 year MBA, and that is not easy, right?
Correct.
But that is the vantage point of a professor. It is focused around the college and what you can bring to the college. But what do you think, Deb, would be the vantage point of the alums?
See, I think if you talk about from an alum perspective, right, this is a person who is in the corporate industry today, right? And this person has already taken that MBA journey from working, then doing this 1 year MBA in case it's a 1 year MBA, and then obviously going again, getting the placements and all. So I think the vantage point is very much industry oriented, right? Wherein he or she is probably evaluating you in terms of how transferable your skills are, not just to the college for the cohort, but beyond that also. Right? So for example, a lot of us actually, talk about industry change and all of that. Whereas from a professor perspective, a lot of industry changes would be, I would say would be appreciated. They would want that to happen from a college perspective. Whereas an alum might evaluate it, whether does that really is possible, whether the placements really help that happen, whether you're suddenly talking about companies that you want to join or your future, job that you want to do, whether that type of structure is available in the college placement structure, the geographies that you just referenced about Bangalore, Ahmedabad, Calcutta, Hyderabad, different colleges. So I think the vantage point of an alum is very industry oriented, and also we should kind of, I think we always should appreciate the fact that because this person has been through this class journey, he or she also has a sketch of the peer group.
Yeah.
So I think it's very, slight difference. The same peer group is a class for the professor, but for this person, it's the peer group where all the fun, all the serious stuff as well as all the fun has taken place. So do you fit into this particular peer group is also going to be very, very important.
I think it's so interesting, right? Because a professor would interact you within realms of the classroom or through projects, right? Yes. But alum would see you whether they can interact with you in that 1 year that they're going to spend with you, and that's very interesting. It's like typically when we hire for corporates, we also look for that airport test, right? Whether I can spend a day, half a day with this individual if I'm stuck in an airport. So that completely makes sense.
See, I think in the end what we are saying is that the professor's experience is somewhere around that college primarily. Obviously, there are a lot of industry connects and all that. And alum's experience is a lot around industry. So somewhere the perception, you need to understand, and as you mentioned, right, it's about being aware.
Right.
You need to be aware of the backgrounds of these people and how those perceptions can build up. Are they written in stone? Probably not.
Yeah, I mean, you can always have a corporate-oriented professor and an academic-oriented alum, right?
Exactly.
But given now we have established the problem, we understand the difference, how can we ace the interview?
I think first of all, one thing that we do want to call out is that while we have distinguished the two interview panels, these should be treated purely from a construct perspective, which certain colleges use, and they keep interchanging also, right? We're not saying any of the panels is better than the other. It's not, right? And each of the panels has, its own way of evaluating you. What we are trying to do, and having done management, probably we can use one of those jargons of information asymmetry, right? What we are trying to do is bring more transparency in, what you can expect, while you are trying to go for these MBA admission interviews, right? And one of the things that you can expect is these two constructs, right? Is there a very stark difference on approaching these two panels? Probably not. But I think what is more important is that we call that thing about, in the start of of our chat, is about awareness, right? We need to be aware, and since, let's be honest, right, most of us are not trained interviewers, right? So it's very human to have some bias. I mean, you can call it bias, you can call it perception, whatever you want to call it. I think as an interviewee, you have to know how to take that bias or perception to your advantage. How can you play that to your advantage, right? I think that's the case that we are trying to address, right? So Sapta, now we are talking of the story remains the same, the person is the same. How do you really go ahead and tackle two different panels?
Right. So, I honestly don't believe that your story should change, because at the end of the day, the panelists are expected to converge to a decision and not diverge, right? But one thing which I believe makes or breaks an interview is your ability to connect to the panel.
Yes.
And if it is an alum-led panel, I believe, my personal opinion, the ability to connect is a bit more, because they are in the industry and you are coming from the industry.
Yes.
Trying to do what they have done a couple of years back, or maybe a few years back. So the ability to connect is much more. And I think if they come from the same industry, the alum, I think there is a inherent chance that you might connect very well. You can go deep into some of your problem statements, the solution explanation, because then you expect the alum to appreciate the depth that you are bringing in. And in case if you are looking to shift industries, right, then it's great, because the alum either would have done that or would have seen their peers do it. Or if you're looking to move into that industry that the alum has, then you can explain how your stories, how your experiences can be relevant to that industry as well, which can give an appreciation to the alum that, look, I can now really understand what they're bringing in. They are not talking infrastructure. They are now talking how concepts of infrastructure is relevant to IT. And one thing I want to call out that, 60, 65, 70% of Indian working force is working in IT. So the chance that you would get someone who is in IT and you are from IT is much more. So the ability to connect is fairly significant. But Dave, what about ability to connect to a professor-led panel?
I think, by virtue of them, the professors coming from an academic background, I think there will always be an appreciation of the academic mindset, right? Now, academic mindset does not mean that you already know all the management. I mean, you don't need an MBA, right? The idea is, do you have an appreciation of the fundamentals of the management principles, right? For example, if you come from, say, an operations background, right? You're trying to explain an operations problem. Do you understand the operations fundamentals? You're talking about bottlenecks, you're talking about people management and all of that. I think there will be an inherent appreciation of the fact that, you understand those things. You could also be, talking to some professors and you're talking about public policy. You never know, some black swan events happened in the industry, in the economy and all that. We've had a lot of them, right? Yeah. COVID being one of them and all that. And you being able to appreciate the fundamental impact of those things from a theoretical perspective, although relevant to your experience, probably could be more appreciated. But right. I think one thing we want to reiterate a lot of times is that in the end, the whole idea of either of the panels is to converge and take a decision of whether to select you. And in the end, you are being selected for the college.
Yeah.
Right? So effectively that convergence has to happen and your story has to be relatable to the particular audience. In one case it's professors, one case there could be an alum present.
Right. And maybe a follow-up question that I think is, does the professor coming from, or teaching people coming from multiple industries have a bit more broader point of view, around whether, you mentioned fundamentals, but around the case that, what kind of responses you would bring into a class?
Oh.
Is it much more relevant to multiple industries, or is it much more relevant to a specific industry, right? Do you think that kind of make a difference?
That does make a difference. And if you think about it, right, if I'm a professor and I know I'll admit you and you'll be in my class, I'd be very happy to have a person in the class where I'm teaching and I want to relate that teaching with your previous experience, and you can then say, yes, you know what, something similar, I had this experience, and that that sharing of experience is very relevant to the class and brings that discussion becomes more richer. I think that plays a very big role, especially from a professor oriented panel. Whereas an alum is very much, I think, if I may put it this way, if an alum is present, you could slightly treat it more as a corporate interview.
Yeah.
Right? You're trying to pitch yourself for the next job, slightly, not always. Whereas in the professor case, you're literally trying to get into the college.
Right.
So I think that could be a slight difference where we could weigh in.
Yeah. But I think what we are saying is, it is all about that slightest advantage, solving that information asymmetry that would help you ace that interview, right? And knowing the panel is one of the first things that would give you the slightest advantage as soon as you get inside the door. And look, we are going to carry a series of these conversations around the MBA interview process. We hope you like this video, and please send in your comments what else you want to hear about an MBA interview, and we want to ensure that we kind of touch upon that. With that, it was a pleasure talking to all of you. This is Deb.
And this is Satta.
And we are Two to Tango.